Hi there, and welcome to our latest Five from the Archive. This time it's the wonderful Rob Stimpson who is presenting on Camversation in 2026. In this session, we get to see a variety of Rob's interests and his passions, along with some fantastically important messages as well. While Rob and I were recording this, he was in the middle of a snowstorm, unfortunately, in Canada, which did affect the Zoom connection, but it's well worth pushing through to hear what Rob has to say. Rob, thank you so much for coming along today. And I'm going to say tonight because it's nighttime and miserable in the UK at the moment. And I'm hoping that it's not quite as bad where you are in the world. But thank you so much for coming along.
That's great. It's snowing here, Mark, so it's probably just as miserable.
It probably is, probably is. And what we're here to do is just to share a little bit of your background, a little bit of your history with the Camversation community to learn more about you, really, because I've been able to track your photography and watch what you do for months now. And I think your photography is just absolutely beautiful. I really do.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
I do. And I think it's the kind of photography that would be great to share with other people as well. But I'm always interested in hearing people's backgrounds and their backstories before we get to their images. So I wonder if I can pass over to you just for a few minutes to talk to us about a little bit about your story, please, Rob, if that's all right.
I'm all about the narrative, Mark, with my photography. And then I just had an interview with a company in Ottawa. But what I like to, my sort of professional career started 25 years ago. And I was working for a company and actually a big Swiss multinational. I was a manager and they gave our whole division a sort of a new career opportunity package, and which was in the year 2000. And I said, you know what? I got to give this a chance because I've always dabbled in photography and it was always a huge part of my life, but just as an amateur. But I was having success selling a few images and that. And then the next thing I know, I said, I got a bit of a monetary package and I said, I'm going to give this a try. I'll give it a year. 25 years later, I've traveled the world. I've been to Antarctica 2 dozen times. I have worked for Parks Canada, Ontario Parks, Ontario Tourism, Destination in Ontario, many different tourism organizations, and I focus on outdoor lifestyle. That's where I make my living. And this year, people say to me, they're always amazed that I continue to do this and make a living. And what I've learned, is I'm sure you can relate to this, is if you're in this business of creativity, you have to constantly reinvent yourself because things change so rapidly. And this year, I've had some really good assignments, but the watershed assignment this year is Ontario Tourism here in my home province. Team me up with a 28-year-old influencer and send me up to the North Shore of Lake Superior with her because she loves the landscape, but she knew nothing about the art history there, which is what they wanted to focus on. So I know a lot about the art history. And then from there, off we would go. And she, 28, she's an ambassador for Nikon. Hyundai gave her a big SUV, and plus there's other companies that she works with. And I'm just like, at 28, I'm just blown away. But the thing that blew me away mostly was she does this work. And for you and I, when we look at photography, we're looking at it in a way, we're looking at composition, what's the narrative, what's the lighting doing. She's shooting everything, throwing it together in a reel and throwing it out there. And they're just like going, and then she gets thousands of followers. Yeah. And I'm just like going, what? Anyways, so it's like the old meets the new. And so, you know what? Move over, Rob, because they're going right by it if you don't watch out. And
The thing. And you can never be, and that's the funny thing, isn't it, about change, Rob, is that you can never be scared of change because if you're scared of it, you're outpaced by it, aren't you?
I know, and I love this, what I do. I'm passionate about it. And I continue to, I've just come back from the Arctic in September doing a workshop, assignments work, and I'm having a big show down in Toronto in 2 weeks' time, which is right now is just consuming me.
How has your own photography changed during that period of time that you've been working full time as a photographer? Because I imagine it's developed quite a lot, if you excuse the pun. I imagine it's changed quite a lot.
Yeah. I think what it is, it's changed, but more from a narrative and a compositional standpoint. Before, I could see things and create, and clients would like it. But what I've done, and because I'm a huge student of the profession, and I follow a lot of really top-notch photographers, I think. There's a couple in the UK who I follow, Mark Cowardine and Joe Cornish, and over here, Ed Bertinsky, and there's a bunch of them, and I'm constantly learning. I think that's the whole key to being in this business. You can't just rest on your laurels. And student of the profession, but I also wanted to see what are people selling or what are people buying? And to see that stuff, I was just looking at the winners for the UK, the natural history photo competition. Have you seen any of the winners?
Yes, I
The
have.
guy who shot the hyena, it took him 10 years. It's a brilliant photograph, but it was, yeah, and some of the young kids, what they're shooting, I'm like, oh, wow. But I don't get jealous. I get motivated about, oh, wow. And looking at, I used to go into that competition quite a bit, but then I would look at some of the stuff going, oh, wow, that stuff is brilliant. But then this year I got a couple of really nice images of moose, like my moose photography. So I'll submit them and see what happens. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Yeah.
And I think that
So
idea of not being jealous but being inspired is a huge thing that we need to
it is.
remember as well, because we
Yes,
don't need to see everybody as adversaries or competition. We need to see everybody as supporting each other in the same kind of endeavor. Yeah, it's a very good
exactly.
point.
Yeah, it is. But people, oh, so this other interview I had, we were in this conversation, and he says, so what type of photography do you do? And what have you seen? And how do you classify yourself? And I said, I'm not a gearhead. Okay. I have really good equipment, but the reality is I know how to use it and I know how to use it in my profession. But I said, I meet people sometimes who got, oh my gosh, I met a guy in Antarctica and he had a phase one around his neck. He had an F4 Nikon off his shoulder. He had a GoPro on his head. And then we were driving back to the ship. And I said to the interpreter, I said, there was some sea spray coming in. And I said, his camera's getting wet. And she just goes, oh, he'll just buy another one. I said, of course he will. So I ran away. Okay, it's not about the photography. It's just about the equipment. And I say to people, I don't care what you're using. They always say, I was using my Olympus 2.8. And I said, that's great, but I want to see what you created from it. It's saying to a painter, you must have really good paintbrushes, man, because your paintings are amazing. You know?
I love the analogy. I love the analogy. Thank you so much, Rob. It's a real pleasure to share some of your images. I'll pass over to you to start
was
whatever
quick.
you're doing.
Okay, here we go. So this is a shot quickly. I use this as a title shot. That's a northern fulmar, and I'm shooting on the wing bridge of a ship in the high Arctic. And these northern fulmars come from the stern and they slingshot by the ship. And I was using a 70-200 looking straight down. And the 40 shots, I got 2 that really worked. And this was one of them, with the swirling of the wake from the ship turned into an abstract with the bird flying over top.
Absolutely stunning shot. And from that point of view, I won't pause you on everything, but I am going to say, from that point of view, just 40 shots to get that one fantastic shot is quite amazing. I would have expected hundreds from that one.
Yeah. No, patience, Mark. It's all about patience. This one here, I put in, this is the church in Grytviken in South Georgia. It's a beautiful church that was built in 1913. The significance of it is Sir Ernest Shackleton, when he died in South Georgia, this was the church that they held his funeral in. And this church, I have walked by this church many times, and I've shot this church literally hundreds of times. But the one time I walked by, there was nobody walking in it. The snow was coming down, nice and very peaceful scene. I shot it with a 400 to get some compression and to create the background. And then there was the luminosity of the church itself with the late afternoon light. And so this image here has just been a favorite of mine. And I'm not a big architectural shooter, but I'm a huge history fan. And of course, Sir Ernest Shackleton and his photographer, Frank Hurley, who was on that epic trip in 1914 to 1916. So it has a strong significance for me with this one.
And on this one, Rob, if I can just jump in, I know there's a slight delay, so I'll have to be careful that it's taken a second to get to you. I'll have to be conscious of that. But this image is so beautiful and so simple, isn't it? The image of the church,
The church,
so simple,
yeah,
crisp, isn't it? It's almost as though it's been imposed on that landscape rather than seen in that landscape, isn't it?
yeah. And I love the symmetry of it with the way the church is and the way, yes, I put it in sort of the middle of the composition, but it was all balanced beautifully with the light, sort of the landscape of South Georgia at that period of time, which really helped the composition.
Super.
So this one here, I threw in because as a professional photographer, one of the things I get asked is, as a professional, what's the biggest hurdle you have? And I say, when I get hired, because I know how to use a camera, but what they're looking for is my creativity. So these 2 images here, the one on the left there, I shot this young lady in front of it's called Old Fort Henry. And compared to your castles and forts, this is just about 200 years old. but I don't think it ever fired a shot during the War of 1812. But they have this program called Fort Fright. And so Kyla, the lady here, I followed her through and she was putting her makeup on and putting her costume on. And then they said to me, okay, now we want you, what can you do with this? So I looked at the scene and she was really good in front of a camera. And so I photographed it. I had my 2 digital flashes on either side of her lighting her up. And I shot a bunch of them. And when I brought them into post, I said to myself, this is a fort that's over 200 years old. So there's no color film at that time. So I desaturated the fort itself, the doors, and I left her in full color on that. And so this actual image became a car wrap for all the parked vehicles in that area at that period of time. And then the one next to it was, they said to me, how can you mix old with new? And so a lot of people there in there, because they have all these period costumes on. So I came up with an idea. I was going to do a double exposure. So I put her in, shot her, and then shot him, and then put the two together. So it's like his grandmother looking over his shoulder as he's on his phone to create this image of that's what kids are doing nowadays, along as well as adults. So as a professional, you're constantly on the move and you've got to think outside the box all the time to try and create something that's really going to sell to their park. And this one over here on the left there, I couldn't believe it went viral on that. The thing is you have to think on you're just thinking all the time. And you're out for a shoot and you're out shooting, say, 7, 8 hours a day. And there's each different scenario to come up with. So there was that one, then over and create the one over to the right. And it's being a photographer, the great fun of it, but it's about creating the narrative that really resonates with the client is really what I like to do.
And I think if you don't create the narrative, then what you are doing is you're very often just capturing things rather than telling the story, aren't you? And I think that's the difference.
Exactly. Exactly. What is it saying? Are you interpreting or what are you just saying that comes out about, are you just doing representational or are you actually interpreting the scene? So this next one here, obviously is a polar bear in the high Arctic. It's a male on that. It's in a place called Lancaster Sound, way up in the high Arctic. And there was a female with her cubs, and I got a lot of nice images of them, but the light was really soft and it really wasn't fantastic. But the captain stayed here until the sun started to get low in the sky. And then this male polar bear comes along. And so I sat there and I was watching him. And then the light. And then, of course, he's on the ice and all these different, it's like this repetition of shapes and light. So light and shadow. And I just waited for the polar bear to do something. I don't like wildlife looking at me directly because then they know I'm there. But here he was, obviously for a seal or something to eat. And then, of course, just where I placed him in the composition and the color of the light and the way it just takes you right to him. And it just surrounds you with these textures and light. And then the polar bear, one of the largest carnivores on the planet. So it was, again, I know you're going to relate to this, Mark, but photography is more than just clicking the shutter. There's a patience that's required. And when I see on the UK natural history one, I see some of the images that are created. And I know that it wasn't a drive-by shooting, as I call it. Whoever the photographer is at the time, they either knew the situation, they knew the geographical location, they knew what was happening. Like the photographer who shot the hyena at that old abandoned diamond mine. But he knew about it for 10 years, and he knew the animal was there, and then he captured it. And it was the same thing here. I could see the polar bear, and then I waited and waited and waited, and then finally the light became part of the whole composition.
And with this image, Rob, of the polar bear as well, what you've also combined here is really beautiful compositional elements because you've not just grabbed the polar bear on a white background, have you? That's the thing.
No.
That you've
Yeah.
added extra depth, which begins to make it feel isolated, makes it feel alone, and you empathize almost with that creature, don't you, as well?
My friend Mark Coverdine, who's an incredible wildlife photographer, lives, I think, in Brighton. He said to me, I had a shot of the Antarctica, and we were at this place called Paradise Harbor, and I was up on a hill overlooking it. And the photograph, it was beautiful as it is, but then there was this zodiac that came in with these concentric lines coming off. And then when I showed it to him, he says, that's the little extra that you get in a photograph.
Yeah.
On that. And a photograph on its own was great, but just by adding that movement to it, created a whole different feel to it. And I always use this now. There's a little bit of extra.
Yeah.
So this one here, I'm shooting with a Nikon 850 here, and I'm putting it on multiple exposure. and I'm a huge fan of water. So this is 10 exposures, all stacked on one another in camera to create this. And probably was sitting around about a 15th to a quarter of a second. And those beautiful lines that you see, I wanted to make sure that those lines were there. I could have gone a lot longer and put like a neutral density filter on, and then it would have come very abstract. But here I wanted to give the viewer an idea of I'm shooting water here. And so these lines all showed up. And then you see on the bottom of the photograph, and then in the sort of the middle, and then all these lines and the movement that's going through and the smoothness. So it gives it a real sense of place. And like I said, water for me is like my mantra. You can put me in front of a lake and I'll sit there the whole day photographing it. And then I just did a workshop in the fall on the fall colors here. And I said to all the participants, I said, okay, photograph something that's out of your comfort zone, because I know what you're going to do. You're going to go do the exact same things that you love to do. So I ended up moving, and I turned my back to the water, the river, and the waterfall that it was just drawing me to it. And I photographed trees and these beautiful goldenrod flowers to create something. But I think everybody needs to do that, move away from their comfort zone and learn a little different about who you are and what you are as a photographer. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You delete them. Yeah. Yeah, because I find a lot of times adults, and you try and you encourage them to move out of their comfort zone, but they may for a minute or two, but there's this magnet. You can see them back to where they were, their happy place. And that's fine. They're out and exploring with their camera, and they're meeting like-minded people. But I figure if you want to get to the next level, you really have to start moving yourself up a notch or two to start seeing your photography go up a notch or two.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. What a beautiful image, by the way. Do you have this or any of your images printed around you, Rob? Because this is one.
Yes, it's right behind me, actually.
Oh, is that the one that's right behind you? I got to say, I was just about to say, this is a stunning image. I would have this printed.
Oh, yeah. It's big. It's probably it's 3 feet across, but I don't think I've framed it properly. And I've had people come in and they say what you say. And my brother came in, he was here visiting, and he says, "That's a Zen image, Rob." And I said, I get the feeling that it is a Zen image too, but people look at it, and I don't know whether it's too abstract for them or maybe I've framed it wrong. So I was thinking and take it in and get my framer to frame it differently to maybe to give it a little something. But I think the image speaks to me, but I'm just a photographer.
Yeah. What do you know?
Yes, exactly. I know. This is one of my latest ones here, Mark. I always say to people, they come into my gallery, and I have a lot of composites, and I love creating. And I say, when I have a lot of time in my hand, I like to what I call doodle. It's like you're a kid and your mom gave you a box of crayons and a coloring book, and away you went. And that. So I was out in the park that's next to me. I call it a park. It's more like a piece of real estate that's 7,500 square kilometers. And I'm out with a good friend of mine, and I'm wandering around, and there's all these milkweed pods are laying on the ground, and none of them the seeds hadn't been distributed yet by nature. So I picked them all up and I photographed them. And then I have all these texture files, and this one I think is called Renaissance something. And so I put the two together, and I just started to work around with the contrast and the color and and I just, okay, what can I do with this? And so this is what came out of it. And I was in a gallery this summer that's printed about 3 feet across, and lots of compliments. But and the guy who owns the gallery, he loved it. He says, he said, "This is going to sell, Rob. This is going to sell." But it didn't. So it's back in the gallery, but I'll find someone will buy it. And so this sort of gives you a sense of what I do and how I see things. And that is, you can't just sit and rest on your laurels as a photographer, like you just do this and this. If you want to push yourself, and I always encourage people to push yourself. And when we get into workshops, I say there's no right or wrong in workshops. This is a chance for you to explore your creativity and do different things and see what you can come up with. Because as far as, and you know this, Mark, photography is not really rocket science. 5.6 is 5.6, and 120th of a second is this and that. It's, as they say in the 21st century, the only limit to creativity now is yourself. There's so much that's out there. And that's why I say I just keep learning and keep getting inspired by people. And like, I saw an Instagram video yesterday about this woman, and she's apparently taken the Instagram thing by storm. She puts her iPhone next to a leaf that she's curled over. She pours water into the leaf and that. Then she walks back and it's on video and she's walking into it and there's this beautiful reflection of her in this leaf. And I'm just going, that's brilliant. Freaking brilliant. So now I'm out because we have so many leaves on the ground. So that's my weekend project to see what I can create with that.
I bet. I'll look out for that on Instagram.
Yeah. So I think that's all of them.
Oh, that's absolutely fine. The range that you've just shown here, Rob, I think is exemplary. And I almost hadn't not expected it in a negative way, but because I've seen so much of your work being quite grand landscape work, I hadn't anticipated the small detailed texture work that you also enjoy as well. This has been fascinating.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. I shoot almost every day.
Yeah.
When we finish here, the tamaracks, you may know them as larches, are in full color right now. They're beautiful. They're just gold color. And so there's this beautiful little lake that's about 10 minutes from here. So I'm going to go over there, and it's a very moody day. But you know what? Mood can create some really nice imagery too. So I'll put on my rain jacket and my hat and take my camera and my tripod and I'll go over and see what I can do. And I always say to people, to get good at this, you got to go out and shoot regularly. I always say, have a date with yourself. I have people tell me, I said, oh, I went out with my husband or I went out with my buddy. And I said, are they shooters? So then we get halfway down the trail and then I hear the voice, are you done yet? Can we go? And so the creativity just, you can see the flames coming out of the back and crashing into the ground. So I always say I go out because I live in the forest and me and the dog will go out. I'll just take the camera with one lens and I may want to take one shot. I may take 10, but it's just a chance for me to get to see what's out there and maybe come up with something new.
You've really blown me away by this, Rob. Goodness me, I'm quite taken aback.
Thank you. When I look at some of the stuff that's on Camversation, holy moly, man, there's some really good stuff there.
Rob, thanks very much for coming along. It's been absolutely
fantastic.
Look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yeah, fantastic, Mark. Take care of yourself.